the book of James, and the book of James isn't long, y'all. It ain't a long book, but we're going to break it down into some bite-sized pieces. And even when we start looking at the first part of James 1 through 18, faith perseveres. That first word out is one we don't even like. We hadn't even got to the text yet, y'all. Perseverance. Ah, that sounds like some long suffering. That sounds like some going through. That sounds like I can't go through the drive-thru and get it. It sounds like it's a battle. And as we started James 1 and we're going through verse 18 today, and then on next week, y'all, we're only doing a few verses because they meaty and you ain't going to like them, but it's okay. It's okay. I had to tell a little boy, this week, talk about brushing his teeth. And I'm like, wait, no, here's how it started. Last week we had youth Bible study here. We started teenagers Bible study. And part of it was because I thought about my daughter going off to school. And I'm like, wait a minute, I got 1 year. There's a whole lot I won't be able to control next year, but right now I can show spoon feed her some truth, right? And I knew we were coming into James, so I was going to do the lesson with her. And the Holy Spirit touched my heart. He said, what about the leaders and the leaders' children? What about their children? So I'm like, okay, we'll just open it up. If it's just me and Victoria, or some others come. We had a full room. And I opened up by saying to the kids there, I know some of you are here by choice, and some of you are here by force. But I don't really care how you got here, because you're going to eat. Because I would just keep my children, when they spit the food out, what do? You take the spoon, and they spit out some more, and you kept doing it until it was all in there. Was I the only one? It became a competition. You gonna eat them carrots. I know you want the peaches, but you gonna eat them carrots. Then finally they're like, okay, blah, 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 I eat the carrots. Can I get the peaches? And so when they were there, I said to them, whether you're here by choice or force, I don't care because you need the word. And I explained to them, when you were a little kid, your mama and your dad had to force you to brush your teeth. You didn't want to brush your teeth. They had to force you to take a bath. But I was sitting there looking at 16-year-olds and 15-year-olds, and I said, what type of shape would your mouth be in had you not brushed? What would your body be like had you not washed? You needed it before you knew you needed it. So you can develop the habit and walk in that. And so I'm kind of thinking that as we go through James, y'all don't leave me, because I'm just going to tell you, you ain't going to like it. I was going back through today's notes, and I'm like, Lord, this isn't fun. We should have went on back to Luke, or went to Romans, or I was thinking about Ephesians and talking about warfare. And the Lord said to me, just as clear as day, how are you going to talk to them about spiritual warfare and they can't even tackle their flesh? How are we going to go into the deep darks of what's going on when you're not even doing the parts you understand? Say, we love you.
We love you.
You can spit it out, but guess what I'm going to do? Put it right back in. So Hank, it's only a few chapters, y'all. But I will tell you, ain't none of them soft, Robin. And I will tell you, as I was going back through preparing this, I kept pulling my toes back, saying, help me, Jesus. Help me, Jesus. And I'm like, this is just chapter 1. And this ain't the whole chapter. So be patient with me. Be patient. Trials and temptations are both inevitable, and God intends both to deepen our faith. That's the main idea of this first chapter. They're inevitable. You can't avoid them. I already said, many are the afflictions of the righteous. The Bible's filled of going through trials and tests. Who would want to read it if the people that we consider the heroes and sheroes, if they didn't go through anything? But it has a purpose. It's just not how hard can life be? How difficult can this be? It's to deepen our faith. And we're going to start reading in verse 1. And it says, this is where it's classified as the greeting. James, a servant of God and the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes in the dispersion. Greetings. Verse 2. Let's start right there. This is the testing of your faith. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. But let him ask in faith without doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. But that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. Let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation, and the rich in his humiliation, because like a flower of the grass he will pass away. For the sun rises with its scorching heat and withers the grass, its flower fades and its beauty perishes. So also will the rich man fade away in the midst of his pursuits. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trials, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. Let no one say when he is tempted, I'm being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. 16. Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. That's meaty, y'all. This is meaty. Just want to give you guys a little bit of background. The author in this book is most likely James, and is being the half-brother of Jesus. And this book is written to predominantly Jewish Christians who were associated with the church in Jerusalem, and they have been scattered after Stephen had been martyred. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. I don't want to get anybody off track. And it's written to examine the relationship between faith and works. It's written for that. Everywhere we look in this book is obedience. It's everywhere. It's filled, think about it, James refers into faith 14 different times in this letter. 14 different times. It's filled with commands to obey, and out of only 108 verses, there are 59 different commands. It ain't but 108 verses. There are 59 commands. So when you think about this and we study through this, obedience is everywhere. They're genuine acts of faith, and they're genuine faith works. You can't separate them. And so we live in a day when we start talking about obedience and commands and law and the works of Christian life, people cry legalism and they run away. They start crying out, but they don't understand that James is saying here, wait a minute, I get what you're saying. That is not why you do it. Those are the expectations of what we do. But James is saying, wait a minute, that stuff does matter. Because the world will have you thinking you can live raggedy and any other kind of way, and we can just say, put grace on top of it. They'll have you say, you know what, I'm forgiven. You are, but if you understood what that cost, and if you understood what that meant, you would have a different perspective on it. The second thing that this does is the book explores the impact of our faith on life in this particular city and life in the world. As we're studying James, he's addressing all issues. He's addressing poverty. He's addressing riches, materialism, favoritism, social justice, the tongue, worldliness, boasting, making plans, praying. He's going through all of it. And he's shining the light on all of it. And telling them, wait a minute, you got scattered. I know you're in different places because of what's happened. I know we're being persecuted. But do you remember what we stood for? Are you living like what you say you believed? He's calling them out on the road. And sometimes this book gets a little bit confusing because it bounces back from different things and topics. So you're like, hold on, who's he talking to? And so when you look at the structure, it's hard to decipher what it is. But every part of it comes back to how your faith should be demonstrated through the works and how you live your life. Everything comes back to the expectation of what are the details of your life saying about what you believe. What is your life saying about what you believe locally? What is your life saying about what you believe globally? And I think about it, people are like, what do you mean globally? Anything you post on social media is now global. What are your posts saying about your faith globally? What is your witness in Walmart saying about you locally? Already quiet. Okay. James 1, it introduces a variety of themes. But the part we're going to hit on starting in chapter 1 is the focus on trials and on temptations. Trials and temptations. Let's talk about how do you go through and how do you face trials. Why do you face trials? What's the point? What's the reason. And the words trials, tempt, and tempted occur in every little perspective of this. As you go through it, the Greek word, and it's so funny, it's peria, P-E-I-R-A, which reminds me of pariah. You know, like when you think about something coming at you, when you study that out, it's literally meaning trial and temptation. Now, that may not be how you say it, but that's how I say it. You know, when I start reading the Greek, it get real fancy. But when I look at that, that's what I call it. Because I think about it coming after me. Trials and temptations coming after you. You look and they're on every side. When you look at verses 2 through 18, these whole sets of scriptures is summarized in one sentence. And it's the theme of this entire lesson. Trials and temptations are inevitable, but they have a purpose to deepen our faith. Say they got a purpose.
They got a purpose.
Say it out loud like you mean it.
They got a purpose.
Because what happens, I want you to say it out loud like you mean it, because you need to remind yourself that. Because when they show up, instead of us recognizing that they have a purpose, we literally waddle down and see ourselves as the problem. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Pride, self-righteousness. What am I not doing right? What do I understand? What's wrong with me? We literally realize it has a purpose. It ain't about necessarily you or the things you need to learn, but what is it that God is doing and teaching me in this process? We have to realize that trials and temptations, they do have purpose. And sometimes we face them on the inside, and sometimes we understand and we face them on the outside. Because there are many times you can be warring with problems on the inside that you don't even know how to articulate. Yes. And you don't tell anybody. Yes. So you're suffering in silence, but there's still a trial. It's still a temptation. And so what I wanted to do today, because there's a lot, is just kind of lay the groundwork going in. And moving forward, we're going to do smaller chunks of text. But we needed to kind of get the overall arching theme going into this first chapter. And the reality is there's some truths that affect and should impact how we see and how we understand and how we respond to trials and temptations. You can't respond to them like the world.
That's right.
You're not of this world. You're in it, but you're not of it. You have something operating on the inside of you that the world doesn't have. So people going through and you going through should look different when there's no relationship with Jesus. The first thing is God is sovereign over our trials. You know, James tells us that trials are never out of God's control. And I wrote down several notes today that I wanted to read to you just like I had it. Because it's so important that we lay the right foundation. Because see, sometimes we can get into talking about trials and temptations and go off into 1,000 different directions. But God told me this isn't about me giving y'all a sermon. This is about me giving y'all some bones. We all got trials. We all got temptations. We all walk through that. But being able to have some bones for them to hang on. Does that make sense? So I'm going to read a lot of my notes because I want to make sure you guys get this. You know, every trial we go through is under God's control. And He's accomplishing His purposes through that trial. I often say that nothing in your life just snuck in on God. He either ordained it or He allowed it. But there has to be purpose in it or you wouldn't be going through it. Then he talked about considering it great joy. It's like, really? What does that mean? Mm-hmm. People try to make you think that, oh my God, I'm going through, smiley face, happy, yay. That is not what it's saying. It is not saying count it all joy as a feeling. It says count it all joy with the revelation of who's walking with you through this.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not a feeling, it's a faith. It's a mindset. It's a mindset. It means check how you're thinking about what you're going through. Mm-hmm. Count it all joy. Because here's the thing. I told you guys before. Joy to me is Jesus only you. See, Jesus only you can give you joy when you're in the midst of a storm. Mm-hmm. So Jesus only you. Am I looking at my comfort in this? Or am I looking at the one who's carrying me through this? Mm-hmm. It's perspective. Mm-hmm. Am I looking at the outcome that I think is best for me? Or am I trusting that He wrote the end for me before there was a beginning? Who am I looking at? Am I looking at my thoughts about this, or am I thinking His thoughts toward me? Oh. Then He talks about various trials. I had you guys circle that when you were reading the text. Why? Because that's big and small, that's minor, that's major. All types of different trials are going to come at you, and you need to realize that trials are not joyful in and of themselves, but they are joyful when you realize that they are under the authority of a sovereign God who's accomplishing his purposes through them in you. So the joy is, wait a minute, you chose me. The joy is, God, you trust me. Or the joy is, you're teaching me something. Because apparently I done misunderstood something and I went my own way. You love me enough to stop me in my tracks, for me to face this head on, because you don't want me to keep traveling down the wrong road. Something's happening. Okay, God, what, you got my attention. Instead of us, literally picking up the phone and calling and whining, how about go to the throne and say, okay, God, you got me.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about calling on the main line and telling what you won't know. I'm calling on the main line telling what you're doing. What we got going on here? What happened? Okay, there's something I need to know? I'm stopping. She's on the main line. What's going on? What? Show me me. Show me me. In verse 3-4, James shares the way God uses trials in our lives. And he continues all the way through verse 12, where he literally puts a book in where he's talking about trials all over again. And so what happens in here is he's getting us to a place where we have to learn how to embrace our trials, not for what they are, but for what they're sent to do. Not for what they are, because what will happen, we'll start looking at the trial and get consumed with it. We'll start getting so consumed with it that we forget to say, okay, Jesus, which way should I go? Because what will happen, guilty, I want to start fixing it. I don't like being uncomfortable. What I got to do, how to make this stop, change up, hello, do this, what can I do? Instead of saying, okay, Jesus, I'm going to sit still right here until I hear from you. And what happens is sometimes we can get going so, life can start treating us good, and we just forget about Jesus. Till a trial comes, and he's reminding you, hold up, what's your source? Who are you leaning on? What are you depending on? So when we look at this text, there are 4 things in trials that should cause us to rejoice. And I wrote them down up here for you. And the first one is, we learn to grow in this likeness. When you look at your text on verse 3, it talks about how the testing of your faith develops endurance, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. Lacking nothing. And people want to take that, I got everything, I got all the money I need, I got all this. No, when you got Jesus, you got every single thing that you need. But if you're immature, you don't know what you got access to.
That's right.
You think, I need this, when people talk about, I need Jesus to do this, and I'm like, did you read the Bible? He said, it finished.
Yeah.
And then what it say? We just do the whole Passover and Lent and, all of that? He said it's finished. So why are you asking him to do in you what he's already done? Isn't it time for you to respond to it? So when you're saying that maturity means, wait a minute, I got every single thing I need in Jesus. I got all the faith I need. I got all the joy I need. I got all the peace I need. I got every single thing I need to walk victoriously in him because I got him. So I have to grow into maturity. God's goal in our lives is maturity in him for us to grow to be more like him. Our response should be like him. Trials are joy when God is your goal.
Keisha, I think a lot of us, I know for me, until you go through those trials, you can't have compassion for other people. And that's what Jesus was.
That's so true. Because I think how often you walk past people and don't see them hurting until you've hurt in that way.
That's right.
Who was it? Was it Dawn? Who was it? I don't know who we were talking, because, for those of you who don't know, Dawn is legally blind. You can't tell it because she's a servant and giver. But I don't know who we were talking about, and, they were saying how many times people walk by people not knowing. Because if you didn't know Dawn, you wouldn't know. She's legally blind. Got the card and all. I'm just saying, she can get a special seat in any events. We ain't mad at that. All things work out for the good. Hello? So we will work in our favor. Then, you know what? We turned everything into good. We had amazing seats. And Joyce Meyer, we had a legally blind, handicap on the hover round. We got ankle brace, toenails. I mean, we had a group. So we just stood in line and waited for our special needs group to go get our seats. All things work for the good. But what happens is that we're looking, Dawn, I love the fact that she refuses to let that stop her.
Yes.
And I have to be mindful. I thought of her last week. I made some copies of some notes, and the Holy Spirit said, blow on my big. And I blew on my big, and I thought about her then. And she sent me a text message because I don't think about it often because you don't know. Thank you for making the print large. I was like, I did. Because you don't think about it. And I started thinking about all them daggone little PowerPoint slides on Monday. She probably go home and blow that thing up, get the magnifying glass, and the Lord says, don't do that anymore. I need for you to take them. I need for you to get Cabriana, take them out of the PowerPoint and put them there so it can be large enough for her to see. It shouldn't be more, I shouldn't be sensitive to that.
That's right.
But you don't know.
But you don't know. And when she hit me back saying thank you, I guarantee you it won't happen no more. Because when I know better, you do what? You do better.
That's right.
So when we think about growing in his likeness, and that was just compassion. Just like Robin said, it wasn't until I thought of it, she responded, that I saw it. It wasn't until I was mistreated 2 days in a row and talked to like I was nobody that something awakened in my belly, said, don't nobody ever need to come around me and feel like that.
Right.
Nobody deserves the right to feel like that. Nobody deserves the right to talk like that. And I thought for a moment, I could exert myself and I could show who I am in Jesus because I am his favorite. But the Holy Spirit in that moment had me say nothing. Be quiet. I'm shaking in my skin. Probably got smoke coming out of my ears. But the only way I could be like Jesus was to not say a word. It is. Now I made some phone calls, however. I made a few phone calls because that ain't right. Now see, if the people who normally get treated like that think they deserve it.
Yes.
I know who I am.
That's right.
It's true.
And I don't care what you think about me.
That's right.
You don't need to talk to nobody like that.
That's
And it
right.
was so funny because it took everything I had to not go back. And the Lord said, why you could just leave it alone, child. Just leave it alone. So that's what I did. Number 2, we got to learn to trust in God's wisdom. It is. Verse 5 makes it clear when you look in your text. We aren't there yet.
Yes.
Verse 5, none of us are there yet. Especially when it comes to wisdom. It lets us all know we're lacking something. And trials are how we are getting and grabbing a hold of that thing which we're lacking. Because when you go through trials, if you know Jesus, Lord, I need some wisdom.
Yes.
What you have me to do? Which way you have me to go? Because if we knew the answer, we wouldn't be in the situation. If we knew how to solve it, we wouldn't have the problem. That's called stupidity. But we don't know. Number 3, we got to learn to rely on his resources. When you look at verses 9 through 11, right in the middle of him talking about this, y'all, he starts talking about poverty and wealth. And I think it's such a dynamic spot to infuse why this was so valuable. Because when it comes to trials and problems, it levels the playing field. Because it doesn't matter how much money you got. Trials are trials. When it comes to an attack on your body, you know what? I don't care if you're the wealthiest person in the world. If you got a very rare condition, you can't pay your way out of that. Only God. So whether you're at the top of the pole in the hierarchy or you're at the bottom when it comes to money, when it comes to those trials, only Jesus himself can give you the resources that you need, because trials don't discriminate. Problems don't discriminate. And 4, we got to learn to live for his reward. James closes this section in verse 12 by saying, the man who endures trials is blessed. And immediately when you read that, it takes us back to Matthew 5 through 7, when it's talking about the Sermon on the Mount. Write down Sermon on the Mount. So I'm going to talk about that in Coffee with Keisha, just for you, Andy, when I saw that. It goes back to the Sermon on the Mount when it's talking about blessed is this and blessed is that. So he's now drawing back to the messages that these people have heard that apparently aren't doing. He's reminding them of the message that Jesus himself gave to them, that they're not living out in their behavior and in their choices. We can see what he's talking about. So what happens here, he's basically telling them, I need you, because they're being persecuted. The church, they're being killed for what they believe. Stephen had, people were getting beheaded, people were being martyred, they were being persecuted for just saying they believed in Jesus. For just saying they were associated with the church. And what he's saying here is we got to get focused on the reward to come. Paul puts it this way in 2 Corinthians 4:7. For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. We need to look at what we're going through in lens of eternity. We got to look at what we're going through. You know, I had, a couple weeks ago, I had a moment, and I'm like, you know what, Lord? I'm going to just be transparent. Living a life poured out is hard. Living a life where you, and Robin said this a couple weeks ago, and I don't even realize if she knew how much it blessed me. Because see, and you may not agree with me on this, and that's so okay. There's some things in my life I don't get choices on. I don't, if I could turn off my care some days, y'all, it'd be turned off. If I knew how to cut my compassion down, I would. I would. And my husband is the person in this room, but I can't. I've tried, and I can't. The closest I get to it is making Aretha mad because I cut my phone off. And she get mad as fire, but I explain to her, I love you, boo, but if you want me to be any good, because I can't cut it off. I was sitting there going back through today's lesson, and my phone kept vibrating. The ringer wasn't on, and I was like, I meant to cut that off. And after a while, I'm like, what if there's a problem? What if this? What if that? And I said, you know what? Cut it off. And I cut it off because I'm like, this is my time to go back through. I was reading back through my notes, going back through the PowerPoint. The enemy wanted me distracted with good stuff, but it wasn't the God stuff. So I don't get choices. And I was having a moment a few weeks ago. My husband can tell you, I was just like, oh, this ain't fair. This ain't fair. Hold on one second. I said, this ain't fair because I can't. I just ain't. Everybody chilling and chillaxing, and I'm pulling 14 daggone hour days. I'm tired. I took a sleeping pill that still didn't work. I'm like, maybe that was night one. I took it the next day. I'm gonna get a good night's sleep tonight, Miss Lily. I threw the daggone pills away because I woke up 3 o'clock. The sleeping pill didn't even let me cut my hair off. I'm like, I get it, Jesus. I threw the ball away. I'm like, whatever. Can't even take those. But what I realized is I don't have choices because of the weight. And I remember I was feeling sorry for myself. I'm like, you know, people think because I'm always around people that I don't deal with loneliness. I'm probably one of the most lonely people you ever met. Because I deal with loneliness. I deal with all that stuff. But what I had to remember when I sat there, all the weight of me feeling like this, living this life poured out is so weighty and so hard. What did Jesus do? Yes. I want all the blessings, and I want the authority, and I want the boldness, and I want to be who he says be. And it's so easy to look around. But what I have to realize is even the weight I'm carrying is nothing in lieu of glory. It's weighty now and it's exhausting now, but in weight of what I've been called to do, and one day I'll be before him and we'll all throw down our crowns and we'll sing holy, holy, holy. Will it matter? And we get mad when people hurt our feelings. We get mad when people don't call us back. I'm good with that. We get mad when people don't show up to fix the toilet. We get mad when people don't do this. We get all these things. But in light of glory, doesn't matter. We get mad when stuff gets left and don't have a microphone. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
For some of those that may not be aware of it, God has given most of us free will. That means, you know, when you want to sometimes complain about something, He gave us dominion over this earth. He's not going to step in unless you ask Him. But if you are God's elect, which I truly know that Keisha is, God will take charge of your life. She don't have free will because God has chosen her, and He's going to do with her life what He wants to do.
Ain't that the truth? I mean, Rocky Mountain.
But listen, I got a question. Well, I want to say something. Is that why the Bible says, or I've heard, I haven't never read it, but I've heard a lot of people say the Bible says that those that are called to preach and teach will be judged at a higher standard.
Oh, yeah.
So you can understand why when I see somebody that has this cloth, and I'm just gonna say cloth, but that's in that role, and I see what they're doing is unethical, and I'm like, Lord, you know, it's just hard because I hold, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm being judgmental. I hold you to a higher standard than me.
Parents, hold on.
I do.
And I get it, but let me help you with something. I'm anointed all day long to teach this stuff, but I ain't anointed to live it. I'm a human.
And that's what I try to say. They're human and they live in a
Listen,
body. And
I'm
they walk out
anointed to
there.
teach. I can go and be crying, toe up from the floor up, life jacked up, go in and get with Jesus, and I stand up here not in my own power, but He's gifted me and equipped me for this. But when I go through hell and I'm tempted, I feel just like you. And so what happens is I recognize the influence I have in my life because people look at me and they do see me as that. But what I tell people all the time is when you see a leader that's struggling, please, with every ounce of your being, come alongside them and cover them and pray because you had no idea the weight for the last 2 weeks. And my husband can tell you, it has been difficult to live with me emotionally and mentally. And it's not that anything was wrong. It has just been over the top. But when you realize 14 souls in 7 days, that's been the weight. The enemy wants me distracted. The enemy wants me tied down. The enemy wants me hurting in my body. The enemy wants me mad at everybody. Because if he can get me distracted and I take my mind off of the work, then the sheep are available. So what happens is the enemy comes at us, I believe, harder. Which is why when pastors and leaders fall, it's so bad because he didn't get one. He took the congregation. He took the congregation's children. 2, 3, 4 generations are still hurting because of one person's decision. So when it comes to those in leadership, he comes at us hard. He comes at us, I mean, some days, and I'll be honest, I feel like I can't catch a breath. It's like torpedoes coming at me left and right on every side. And literally, I have to gasp for breath. But if you're not with me, and see that, one of the funniest things is Dave was with me yesterday, and she went to a meeting, and she was with me for the meeting. After the meeting, she's like, I was at the meeting, but I wasn't at the meeting. I wasn't with you. I was sitting in the meeting. What in the world was that? What just happened? And I'm laughing because that's what I've been called to do. But she saw us in before all the stuff we're dealing with, all the issues, all the problems. But that, I have to be able to show up, even when I don't feel like it. See, y'all can get mad and don't come on Monday or Wednesday. Or you won't get your nails done. You won't get your hair done. I'm tired, it's raining. Y'all go home. I got to show up.
See, you've been called, and going back to what she said, there's a lot of preachers up there preaching that weren't called to be preaching. And they've got no business being up there preaching. And they do lead the flock astray. That's why you should not even take what Keisha says if you don't verify it in the Bible for yourself. It's your own fault if you don't verify it.
But see, that's one of the things I love.
I'm like,
that
don't
she
take
puts the word.
because here's the thing. I can err. I do my best to make sure I do my research and I do my stuff, but I'm a human. I'm limited in my understanding. And so I study and I live this. People, I don't listen to secular music very rarely. Outside of when we work out, I listen to Motown. Because Eric likes to work to old school Motown. But I have to saturate with this stuff. Because when I stand, I want to give you purity. And I want to make sure that I've done the best I can to keep Keisha out because I don't know.
And I got that's big because I got that every time I would go see Trey preach. That's the first thing he said. He said, "Well, read the scripture." He said, "Don't take my word for it. Open your Bible and read
it for yourself." Because you don't know what will happen when you start getting filled with the word. You'll hear something that don't set right. I was talking to someone yesterday, and the preacher said on Sunday that miracles and signs and wonders are not for today.
Mm-hmm.
In a church, preaching.
Wow.
And they were asking me what I thought. I said, I hope you left. And I'm like, I hope you left. I mean, there ain't nothing to think about that. I said, because I'm a miracle. You're a miracle. So we had a conversation. Let's get on about at a time. Want to hit why trials and temptations? We are responsible in our temptations. We are responsible. Each person is tempted when he's drawn away and enticed by his own evil desires. You are responsible for your own temptation. I put it in my notes here. The responsibility for temptation and sin lies squarely with us. For our sinful desires will lead us to give into a temptation. When we sin, we have nobody else to blame but us. We can't blame the neighbor, we can't blame the spouse, can't blame the children. When we choose to sin, we are squarely responsible. Romans 7:18 says, for I know that nothing good lives in me that's in of my flesh. Nothing. And I wanted just to hit real quickly on the anatomy of sin. I want you guys to get this: deception, desire, disobedience, and death. And think about it. Step 1 is to be deceived. When you go back to Genesis with Adam and Eve, the first thing is, did God say? Is this real? What is he holding out for me? What's really going to happen? How bad is this going to be? What's the situation going to be? And what will happen? You'll allow the enemy to deceive you into justifying that your sinful behavior is okay. Then the next thing going to happen is their desire. There's desire. No fish knowingly jumps onto a hook that ain't got nothing on it. What do? We disguise it. If you're fishing for bass, my dad puts one thing on it. If you're going for crappie, you put another something on it. So when you look at his tackle box, you got grasshoppers, worms, gobbler thingy, shrimp, all these funny little color things, night crawlers, and whatever he's trying to catch, he baits it according to their desire. That's what Satan does. So that's what he does. See, Satan can't come at me with alcohol or crack. When you grow up with people who are addicted and you see that, but he can come at me with my mouth. And he can come at me with my temper. He can come at me with sugar and cake. He can come at me with a whole bunch of stuff. He can come at me with complaining. Y'all mighty quiet. Yeah. He can come at me with comparing. Don't act like I'm the only one he's coming at. He's coming at you too. And what he's doing is he's trying to find your desire. And what he does, I shared this on Sunday. The hook gets cast out with whatever it is you like on it. Yeah. And you sit and you look at it. And you look at it. And you start playing the game. I've been wanting that. I need that. So then all of a sudden, it's taking too long. So then what my dad does is he zips the line. And all of a sudden the fish think, I'm going to miss out. Oh, Lord, here I come. What does he do? He opens up his mouth, puts it on the hook. And you know what happens? Nothing happens then. Because if he chooses to open his mouth, he can get away. But what does my dad do? As soon as there's weight on the line, you snatch it. Why? Because now the hook catches him in the top of his head, and he's destined for death.
That's good.
Now all this started with the little silly fish saying, I think I want it. I don't know. And then that's what the enemy does for you. He lures you by whatever your desires are. And what happens, we get to death, and people think that all means physical death. How about death of your witness?
Right. Oh, that's good.
How about death of your dreams? How about death of your future? How about death of your size 8?
Preach.
Come on now, let's just keep it real. Because some of y'all size 8s died a long time ago. Why? Because that sugar, that fried chicken, that stuff, death to the call that God has on your life. Because I remember times I was doing things in my life and I'm like, I don't know if it was bad or not, but I realized the Lord told me to stop. So then I have to ask myself, if I wasn't obedient then, could I stand here now? So were you guys at stake when I was looking at the hook circling? What if I'd have bit a hole of pride and said, but God, I don't want to come back to Rocky Mountain. I don't want to do full-time ministry. I like to do the teaching and the training and the travel. I want to do that. What if I'd have bit that hook? Where would y'all be? We got to realize when you bite the hook, who else are you taking under with you? Who else are you taking down underneath with you? Who are you dragging down to Sheol with you? When you bit it, your kids, because you bit it. Look, think about it. What about God labored.
Yes.
They ate. Did we not feel the impact?
Yes.
Yes.
Amen. Amen.
Today is worth of it. God's faithful for our salvation. His goodness is unchanging. God doesn't have mood swings. His goodness is undeserved. We couldn't get it. We didn't deserve it. His goodness is unending. He saved us from our sin, and He'll see us through our sorrow. That's God.
Yes.
So the trials and temptations, why are you whining and crying? If He can snatch you out of hell, don't think He can't snatch you out of this. When it's performed, when it needs to perform and perfected that thing in you that needs to be perfected, it'll be finished. Until then, watch your mouth. God conquered sin and suffering through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ so that today you and I can consider trials pure joy and face temptations with steadfast confidence. Why? Because of the cross. Jesus, only you. We can keep our mouth shut. Jesus, only you. We can get up off our couch and stop being lazy. Jesus, only you. We can become who God has called us to be. Jesus, only you. We can die to ourselves and live for Him. Jesus, only you. You can make the difficult decisions. Jesus, only you. I consider it joy because Jesus, you got me. You had me then and you got me now.
Yes.
Joy. Jesus, only you. And I want you to spend some time just thinking. I put these on your notes for your up close and personal. Explain how believing in God's sovereignty through our trials is crucial to preserving faith. And to list some ways painful circumstances and unanswered questions can actually strengthen our faith. I want you to spend some time thinking through that. And one of the things that the Lord had me do was go back through some of the darkest days in my life and think about how, oh my God, I felt alone and I didn't know how it was going to come together and I didn't have a clue. But then I look back and see how He brought me out. And realize if He brought me out of that, He can bring me out of this. Heavenly Father, we thank You for this word. We thank You for just